Hello, my name is Michael Pinchera. Welcome to everyone. Thank you for having an interest in joining these EA Zoom meetings. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here, to be a presenter in this. Now, what I'm bringing today are primarily the fruits of my studies and work with clients out of EA, anthroposophy. I do biography work, and I've been a Waldorf teacher for about 40 years, and all this has kind of come together in my work. So this presentation I'm giving today is really only an overview. For to go into it in depth would take way too much time. I'll be using some terminology and views, not necessarily in the usual EA lexicon, but keep an open mind and use what you can or use what you will. I think keeping an open mind is something that people in EA are very prone to do. So we're going to look at an overview of 7-year phases of the human life from birth through 84. We'll then explore the 3 periods within the first 4 7-year phases. And I will then show how the moon's nodal cycles correlate to these 7-year phases. And I think there will be a Q&A time at the end. And so if there are any questions, I'd welcome them. And right now, I would like to open with a verse from Rudolf Steiner. The stars once spoke to human beings. It is world's destiny that they are silent now. To be aware of this silence can bring pain to earthly humanity. But in the deepening silence, there grows and ripens what humanity speaks to the stars. To be aware of the speaking can become strength for spirit man. So when talking about these phases of human development, I'm talking about 7-year phases. The reality of the spiritual archetype of the number 7 lives in this unfolding of the human soul. And by soul, I'm referring everything that is connected to our human experiences in thinking, in feeling, and in willing. Basically, it's our astral body, okay? And the incarnation of the human being is a process which is not complete at physical birth. These births progress in 7-year phases, and the first 3 are very foundational. The 4th through the 6th are grounding and are the leaping off times for when we can start co-creating, okay? Thinking, feeling, and willing are these soul forces in us, are intrinsically a part of us, of course, at all times. But they manifest and are focused in various ways. And in each 1/3 of each 7-year period, they manifest differently. So with willing, feeling, and thinking, okay, I want to look at starting with age 0 to 7, from physical birth to age 7. The next slide, please. Thank you. So as we see here from birth, denoted by that little star, to age 7, this period is ruled by moon, okay? So we're really dealing with the development, the growing of the physical body, okay? And thinking itself is very much asleep. Feeling, very, very dreaming. And willing, okay, willing isn't just, what we intend to do. Willing manifests in everything that is active in us. And willing is the most active principle in our lives at this time. And it's very much connected. It's so wrapped up in organ development and growth, okay? And so what I call, well, what is known as the etheric body, and what can be also called the formative force body or the time body. This is, we can say that we are beginning to start creating our own, but we are really enveloped by our mother's etheric body, and we are modeling ours after it. So this is, one of the reasons why the connection with the mother is so strong and so important, okay? And the child at this time is imitating everything that is coming through its senses. It's really a pre-thinking through imitation. And so much is going on during this time, and I'll be talking about the thirds of this time a little bit later. So by the time we are 7 years of age, the thinking wakes up. Okay, it's gone through a period of the etheric body has been working through the body, developing all its organs and everything. And now as you can say it moves up from the bottom, from the feet up in a certain sense. You can say, the baby just lies there, and it moves around a bit, but it's very prone most of the time. And then it can start moving around and finally gets, maybe starts crawling after a while. And then, can stand up and walk. These etheric forces, there are certain physical indications. By the time it reaches the head, this is when we lose teeth. It's an indication that the etheric forces are freed up for thinking. And this is when schooling can start in a very healthy way. We push thinking too soon before this time, and a lot of memorization, stuff like that. We're robbing these etheric forces. So by age 7, okay, we are now then reaching into this Mercury time, this time of where we are really communicating, interacting with the world. This is the learning, this is the basic primary school time, brand new connections. And what is happening during this time is that the etheric body we have our own individual etheric body, okay? And we've given up the mother's etheric body, okay? So we stepped away a little bit, and we freed up our processes for memory and thinking. And so now we then move into this age of Venus at 14, adolescence. And what is adolescence really but the birth of the astral body, our emotional body? This is really when personal karma starts coming to consciousness. And we move away from the hereditary identity to the individual identity, which comes to a certain fruition at age 21. The next period really is more than just one 7-year period. It's 3 7-year periods. It's ruled by the sun. In each 7-year period, it's really the I now is birthed. The individual spiritual entity is now in this individualized etheric, individualized astral body. And now the I has to come in and take hold of these things so then it can transform them more consciously. And so this period, it's really a wakeful, conscious, purposeful activities now possible, okay? Age 21 through 28 is a mirroring time of the Venus time, okay? So all that was in the astral body, all the feelings and everything has been worked upon, and one's own ideals, aesthetic sense comes to the forefront. And, this can be very elevated, or one can sink down into just leading a very hedonistic life. Most people kind of have to do a dance between the two. From 28 to 35, there's a mirror from 7 to 14, and our those Mercury experiences that we've really, have developed up to this time, now is turning into, as our eye takes hold of it, we're more and more capable of rational thought, clear thinking. This is a time when many people, not everyone, but many people do graduate work and this sort of thing, or start businesses. And then from 35 to 42, we're going back to the very early, a mirroring of the very early unconscious times. And so what was buried unconsciously in our will is now comes to consciousness, and we have the ability, okay, the potentiality of experiencing ourselves through our thinking, through our self-awareness of that we are spiritual beings, among other spiritual beings here on earth, other human beings, other creatures of this earth, and then, eventually other spiritual beings not incarnated. I want to digress just a little bit, because in the middle of the 28 to 35, at 35, 33 to 35, is a time when the etheric body really starts separating from the physical body, okay? And what we can see, many of us can observe in life, that after, middle age, the older we get, certain people just decline with their bodies. The physical realm, the physical laws just take over, okay? If the human being is very active, creative, purposeful in their lives, and do a lot of things with other people, we're able to rejuvenate ourselves, which then has a rejuvenating effect on the body. So we are actually at a point at this age, 35 roughly. All these numbers, by the way, are not timed by the clock. They're rough indications. So just keeping that in mind. So 21 to 42, we have the ability to master our inner life, consciously transforming our emotions and habits and thinking in accordance to spiritual law. We can create truth, beauty, and goodness in the world. This is basically a process of spiritualizing ourselves, each one of us as an individual, and having a positive effect in the world. This is also creating, we are giving seeds for what, we call our higher self. And we can say that we've taken this thinking, feeling, and willing, this sentient soul, intellectual soul, consciousness soul, and then we can take it even further into what in Sanskrit is known as manas, or spirit self, buddhi, spirit life, atman, spirit man, spirit human being. And it's the ability to really think with imagination, to be able to see things imaginatively and understand them through imagination. Through buddhi, we are inspired. Through inspiration, we can listen into things and understand it. And through Atman, we are able to really die to ourselves and totally meld ourselves into another being, another thing, to understand them. Okay, so to continue on, age 42 to 49, this is a Mars period. So everything that we've developed up to this time, there's a possibility of consciously carrying them out, manifesting them out in the world. And all of our experience that we have, we want to make our mark in the world. From 49 to 56, ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is very interesting. People say, oh yeah, that's expansive. Jupiter is expansive, and yes, indeed it is. But I want to bring something else about Jupiter, that this is an expansion of one's own wisdom that is already inherent in us because of our past life experiences. Okay, so situations occur that bring out this inherent wisdom. So there's we need to have the interactions with the world. And yeah, the timing comes out, let's say during a Jupiter return, let's say, or Jupiter transit, that all of a sudden, like things are much, nicer and brighter and all sorts of new things happening. But it's really something that's intrinsic to ourself already. It doesn't have the kind of newness that Uranus will bring. From 56 to 63, this is ruled by Saturn. And Saturn, I like to call it like it's a harbinger of cosmic memory. And so what I mean by that is like there's like this constant voice from Saturn that's always speaking to us, what is a human being really? Who are you really? So so that's living in us all the time. And there's this potential at this age, by 63, this potential, that everything depends on how one has led their life, of course, what kind of hindrances, what kind of denials, what kind of refusing to deal with things. But there's a potential here of experiencing, of ending an experience of past personal karma in the present life. Not that all of our karma is done with, but that starts becoming a grace period. And to the degree that we have this, we are able to express the wisdom of the elder to the world. 63 to 70, ruled by Uranus. And to the degree that we have developed our imaginative way of meeting the world and gaining knowledge through our imagination, we're able to give this back to the world. And the same with 70 to 77 with Neptune, Buddhi. To the degree that we have been inspired and allowed ourselves to be inspired by others or higher beings, we can give this to other people. And to the degree that we've really not lost ourselves, but let ourselves die for something higher, we can really understand ourselves in a much deeper kind of way, and we're able to intuit into others and teach others and bless others in this way. So now to the next slide, please. Okay, looking at the top line, we see the 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, and so on. I divided it up into thirds. So I want to look, first of all, at these thirds and what goes on here. And I won't go through the whole life. I'll just go up to maybe up to 42 because of time. So anyways, from, I had mentioned before, at age, these numbers, just take them as indications, not exact, like clockwork. So between 2 and 4 is really a time when our etheric forces allow us to have memory, okay? And the first time that children generally say I about themselves, call themselves an I. And their thinking is freed up at 7, okay? The next third after that is the 9-year change, 9-10-year change. And this becomes a crisis in consciousness, which I'll talk about later when I talk about the nodes. But during this time, it's very interesting with children because maybe a child who hasn't had this at all previously, they may all of a sudden become afraid of the dark, or they will question, are you really my parents? Am I adopted? They feel very alone in the world in a very childlike way, but they lose a certain innocence of childhood at this time. Then the next third, between 11 and 12, this is the time when not rational, but causal thinking starts. And then by age 14, abstract thinking can start. Okay, and then we have the next thirds going by, and it's very interesting that at 8, we have 18.6. So this I'll talk about this when I talk about the nodes, because the nodes just go at the same time. 21 is the birth of the I, and then the next one at I have a better, closer picture here for myself. Yeah, 23 and a half. So is the Jupiter return at this time. Okay, so this new expansion of oneself, one starts really exploring a lot of different things because one is already feeling themselves as an individual, and they go out. Myself, this is the age, like, almost exactly when I was 23, the summer before I turned 24. This is when I discovered astrology, and I was reading every spiritual book I could get my hands on, and just explored a lot of things. And so then 28, you have the Saturn return by this time, and then we have. Well, I'm just going to just shoot on ahead to 42, which is the Uranus opposition. So all that one has developed as an individual at this time now comes into a huge, crisis. It can be a crisis and an awakening of one, a very objective view of oneself, and whether or not one can actually live up to moving on. Because what happens here is that at age 28, this is, at the Saturn return, begins a whole sense of, or a whole new cycle of feeling very alone in the world, feeling oneself as an individual. And it tends from this age on, some people hang on to, like really looking back retroactively, like holding on to their adolescence. And it can continue. I mean, we may have all heard of or met people who are wanting to keep their adolescence well into their 40s and beyond. And this is where the crisis of consciousness really happens at 42 with the Uranus opposition of whether or not we're going to really have the courage to move on to a direction that where we lose all security. So from here, so we've been looking at these 7 basic, these basics of the archetypal phases of the soul development, these inner processes for the I to work into. Okay, our spiritual being incarnates into these soul aspects that have been birthed. Okay, and we take hold of them. So now we're in a position to be able to transform them, to actually take control, or master might be a better word, master our thinking, feeling, and willing, so that we can change karma into dharma. So from here, I would like to talk about the nodal cycle. So as we know that the nodal cycle is roughly every 18.6 years, the conjunctions from the natal position. And so I plugged all these in, and then I divided them in halves and quarters. And I find that these have corresponded very interestingly with these 7-year phases. So looking at, 18.6, the first nodal return, we have this, sense of individuality and the potential of what our particular nodal messages are, okay? All of our gifts, all of our challenges now are before us, and, and the potential of being able to take control of our lives is, we're given a picture of this at this time. We are inspired. okay? Before this, okay, there's, you can say, let's go back to 4.6 years. It's you could say it's a square, waxing square. The crisis of consciousness at this time is different than one it is in a conscious person, consciously thinking person. Here, it's making something into, it's turning into something very concrete, okay? And this is a time of memory, time of first being able to say I, okay? And then 4.6 years later, 4.5 years later, we're talking about the 9-year change. In opposition, really coming into a whole different relationship to oneself. One starts feeling, of course, one is very young, but as separate from one's parents, separate from the other students or the other friends. And then the waning square at beginning of adolescence. And so here we have, it's like this coming out, out into the world, stepping out. Do I dare, be myself? There's the crisis of moving forward into the unknown. It's letting go of the past, yes, but this, because it's a waning square, it's really any fear and any challenge. It's really about, what am I stepping into? So this is adolescence. And then the next square after the first nodal return, this coincides with the Jupiter return. And so there's this, moving away from the past, as an individual, part of it could be moving away from identities, from family, identities from society, perhaps, depending on the individual, but there's a time here one really has to constructively work on who they are. And the next opposition at the time of the moon, between the moon and the Saturn return. So this is a whole new awareness of oneself. One's identity is, becoming more concretized. And so the I is really coming in very deeply into one's being. And this is at the end of the development of the sentient soul. This is how one really feels oneself as an individual. The next square is at 32 and a half at this time, when there's like a death, a situation where one can feel really crucified, if you will, by world events around us, our relationships, different, who knows what situations. Many people go through a time of deaths at this time, and hopefully rebirths by 35. So then the next conjunction, the next return is right before age 38. And this is, this time coming up to ending your 30s, coming into your 40s, and then at 41, 48, you have this whole new waxing square coinciding with the Uranus opposition. So this whole thing, we can go through the whole life like this, but what I'm really trying to point out here is how the I, the spiritual entity, is going through these steps of coming in and meeting with how our different soul bodies are developing, okay? And all of this comes together according to what our past karma has been, okay? And, how our bodies interact with each other. These can be indicated by the modes and the elements in our chart, okay? And and also like our temperaments are a result of how our bodies come together. And so us as individuals, as we come into these bodies, we then have now have the ability to change our karma into Dharma. So at this point, I would like to open it up to question and answers. Any questions?
Hi, Michael. I was wondering, where do you see Chiron in there anywhere? Do you use it for this purpose?
Well, I use Chiron all the time in a chart. Chiron, has its, has its place in here. But as far as these archetypes of these life phases, you can. I haven't put it into this particular chart at all. I mean, in a birth chart, I definitely take Chiron into consideration. It's a very important part of the chart. It is this bridge between Saturn and Uranus, in that sense of going from all that a human being has become, okay? And no matter how much we've developed ourselves, there's something in us that has been wounded along the way. Just to be conscious, there has to be some kind of wounding. And so, there's that possibility, for it to fit in this kind of schematic look, this age of 63, is this bridge time of when people are can move into this new realm of the possibilities of acting out of our higher spiritual soul bodies. Of course, it all depends, on how we've lived our lives. I mean, all of this depends on how we live our lives, what kind of choices we make, the karma that we continue to make, and how that will affect how we move into these older years. And of course, throughout our whole life, Chiron has its effect. All these planets have their effect all the time in each one of these ages, according to how our chart is. This is just like another, how should I say, another layer of how or where the all the soul elements in the chart work. You can say that these are archetypal movements that all human beings go through, but because they're archetypes, they're not necessarily going to be worked out in the best, most positive ways, the most elevated ways. I don't know if that answered your question.
It did, actually. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, any more questions?
Michael, is this system something that you came up with? I missed the beginning of the meeting, so I missed your introduction.
No, I did not come up with it. This has been basic. I mean, I've added to it. It's been basically, it was worked out through, there are indications up through Saturn given by Rudolf Steiner. Then other people, I don't know if you know somebody's name, Willy Zucker, who developed the astrology into what he called astrosophy. He worked with these cycles very, very much in detail. And so have other people. Robert Powell, I don't know if you know Robert Powell, he works with this quite a bit. But I've added in the periods of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto in this in the older years.
Thank you. I know who Rudolf Steiner is, and I think I've heard of astrosophy, but I was just curious. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Any more questions?
I have a sort of a simple question. Do you feel that how deeply you've ground into all these more embodied phases, if you will, going up to age 63 determines how successfully it seems like there's an opportunity at 63 to, you know, transcend in a way, to take it to a higher octave and kind of play off of what you know. That's the first part of the question. And the second part is there any latitude in here for time dysmorphia, that sometimes people do miss the developmental boat of certain, you know, phases? And do you find that they pick it up later in retrogrades, or, you know, how fixed is that, would you say?
Well, no, it's not fixed at all. It's you know, human life is very, very complicated. And, you know, there's so many things. One, it's part of it, you know, because of karma, of course, but even at our early ages, because of it'd be part of our karma. But let's say decisions that our parents make, the food we eat, you know, all these things have an effect. The way we're educated, it has an effect. The traumas that we experience at early ages, they affect our ways, so that we, you know, we miss many boats. We miss many boats, you know, at this time in our evolution. Many boats are missed, and so when we become aware, you know, from the sun period on in particular, though I mean people can be aware, you know, self-aware before that, but then when we can really start taking hold of ourselves, then, you know, we start, you know, okay, I see this needs to be done. And of course, you know, people, you know, we have our denials. People have they want to follow their wishes and other desires rather than the, you know, the best thing for their, you know, we make many mistakes in our lives. And plus what you know, what, looking at this chart, each of these, let's say from, you know, let's say 28, we can say that, you know, 29 reflects 27, 30, 26, 31, 25, and so on, okay? And we can look at the whole life like this. And we, you know, things that happened back, you know, when we are very young will show up in a later stage of life, not only psychologically, but also things that happen to us, say the way that we were educated can have an effect on us physically. People, you know, many people who have had too much intellectual drilling, you know, hammering of facts, and, you know, they become, you know, it has an effect on their nerves, it has an effect on their hearts. You know, traumas that we have, you know, it's one age can show up at another age. And so we always have these possibilities. You know, we have the past, we have what's unconscious in the past working on us. We have what's unconscious from the future, our intentions, our North Node material, pulling us from the future. And we in the present, we are always, every present, we are constantly, you know, we have the ability, you know, of course it takes, you know, wakefulness to say, aha, you know, okay, I see this, and okay, I need to do this. I need to not do this. You know, it's every moment is a matter, it's a moment of decision.
That's great. Thank you. That was a beautiful explanation. It almost seems more holographic than linear, you know, that you've come back to. Yeah.
Yeah, not linear at all. I mean, I have a very linear chart here, and my apologies for looking so heavy with all the decimals and everything, but it's just a skeleton.
Thank you very much.
Do we have
You're
any
welcome.
further questions? Okay, Michael, as we wind down your meeting, any final thoughts on this topic?
Yeah. So, you know, what we have here, you know, we're always, you know, it really points to karma, of course. And what is behind all this too, it's really the magic, if you will, the beauty, I'll just use the terms, the truth, the beauty, and the goodness of what it means to be a human being, okay? And there are these cosmic laws that we live in, okay? And we are slowly but surely becoming aware of them. At one time in humanity's development, people very, instinctively had this knowledge, but it was a very dreamy kind of consciousness. Now we've gone through this incredible materialism, and maybe we're still in it, but we have the ability now to rise out of that. And so when we look at these cosmic truths and find our place in them, then what we really experience is that, you can get stuck on looking, I got this karma and I've got to deal with this. And, but it's also, it's the beauty of what it means to be human, and the beauty of the fact that, what is it that we are developing towards.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael. Great. A wonderful presentation on the phases of life. Would you all please thank Michael Pinchera?
Thank you, Michael. Brilliant.
Thanks, Michael.
You're very welcome, all of you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Take care, all.
That whole
Thank you.
process.